Alright, welcome back folks to WrestleRant. I'm Graham Giason Matthews. Now that it's November, that could only mean one thing. Survivor Series is right around the corner, and I've been spending the last couple weeks watching every installment in Survivor Series history. I'm only straight through the mid-90s at this point, but I will be watching the rest of them as the weeks go on, and in doing so, I will be reviewing all the Survivor Series shows I have yet to review. And by that I mean I reviewed a handful of Survivor Series shows last year, just about half of them. From 1990, 96, 97, 98, 01, 02, 03. I think I watched 03 too. 05, 08, 2011, and 2012. I might be missing a few, but I'm pretty sure those are all the ones that I covered last year. So if you want my thoughts on any of those Survivor Series shows, they're already up here on the channel on WrestleRant from last year, so be sure to check those out first. But just a little disclaimer here in regards to the first few Survivor Series shows. That I'll say this right now too. If you're not a fan of the entire show being just consisting of tag team matches or elimination, the traditional 5-on-5 or 4-on-4 elimination tag team matches, these shows aren't for you. These shows, that's basically all that they are for the first few years. 87, 88, 89, and 90 were all Survivor Series elimination tag team matches. And I'll explain why that was fun in a second. But as a result of that, these reviews will not be that long. There's really not that much analysis. I can't break down every single elimination. I'm just giving my general thoughts on the match. But in saying that, we had the show kick off. I mean, before we can get into the opening of the show itself, like I said, these shows were just fun. And I like wrestling that's fun. You go to an indie show, it's fun. You go to a WWE show live, more often than not, it's fun. And I like fun wrestling. It's so far and few between nowadays, and I like taking wrestling seriously, don't get me wrong, I'm the biggest mark in the world, but I just like wrestling where I can sit back, relax, and not worry about who's going to win or lose, or what the future booking is, or whatever. I just like to sit there and enjoy myself and be entertained. That's, at the end of the day, that's exactly what it is, World Wrestling Entertainment. Maybe not at this time, but it was still technically implied. It's sports entertainment for a reason. And that's what these shows were, taking place on Thanksgiving night. Every single year, they put on a fun show. And some of the matches were just randomly put together, but more often than not, a lot of these elimination tag team matches consisted of feuds. They furthered feuds. They started feuds going into WrestleMania Royal Rumble season in the early part of the next year. So it was kind of a building block of the other pay-per-views, vastly different from Rumble, WrestleMania, and SummerSlam. It offered its own uniqueness in the pay-per-view schedule, because all the elimination tag team matches meant something. And of course, that's a lost art nowadays. You know, sometimes, like last year when we had the Authority versus Team WWE match, it meant something because something was on the line. You had a lot of feuds involved there. The implications were huge, and it was in the main event. A great build. So that's, it's something that you used to see all the time, not just once every few years. It was something that was done consistently from year to year to year in the early 80s and mid-90s. Now, not every show was great. I'll get to the very ugly parts of Survivor Series as the years go on. Not every single show was amazing. But this one, and specifically 1987, the very first, the inaugural installment in Survivor Series history, was very, very good. I mean, I don't know if it was amazing, but it was very, very entertaining. I think it was kind of on the shorter side, too. It might have been around 2.5 hours, I want to say. I think it was a little bit shorter than the rest. But this is one of those shows where you don't have to think too much when you're coming into it. And for most of these shows, I didn't either I didn't know what was going on before or after them, or either I did, and it didn't really matter. You can go back and watch these shows, and whether you were a fan of these times or not, you can just enjoy the wrestling, you can enjoy the action. That's what most of these Survivor Series shows guarantee you. Just a fun night of wrestling and entertainment more often, just moreover than anything else. So anyway, we'll kick off the show here with the first 5-on-5 elimination tag team match in Survivor Series history, pitting Team Randy Savage, which consisted of the Macho Man himself, Jake Roberts, Brutus Beefcake, Ricky Steamboat, and Jim Duggan, against the Honky Tonk Man's team, consisting of himself, Ron Bass, Harley Race, Danny Davis, and Hercules. So a very good match, I thought, for the first ever elimination tag team match in Survivor Series history, getting fans familiar with the concept. It was great. Randy Savage leading his own team, I thought was great. You had a lot of star power in one match. You had Steamboat, Roberts, Savage, Honky Tonk Man, Harley Race. You had a lot of star power for one match in Survivor, one match on the show that had like 50 wrestlers on it. That's a lot of great star power. And this, I thought, was kind of the quote-unquote the workers match, the mid-carders maybe, probably upper mid-carders. And it's funny, too, because you had this match, which was kind of the upper mid-carders, the mid-carders, the workers. The next one, we had the women's elimination tag team match. After that, we had the tag team elimination match. And the main event was like the main event stars. Now, not everyone in that match were main event stars, but a lot of them were. So we'll get to that in a minute as well. But I thought this match was great. And the sole survivors were Savage, Roberts, and Steamboat. So a very entertaining way of kicking off the night. So as I mentioned, after that, we had our first ever women's 5-on-5 elimination tag team match in Survivor Series in WWE history, pitting the Fabulous Moolah, Rockin' Robin, Velvet McIntyre, and the Jumping Bomb Angels against the Glamour Girls, Donnie Cristianello, I think that's how you pronounce it, Dawn Marie, and Sensational Sherry. Now, I was kind of surprised that Moolah was a babyface in this match. Did not see that coming in. Again, I don't really know much about what went into these matches or what happened after them. I just kind of watched them to watch them. Sometimes I'll do some further research if I'm kind of interested in something, but I didn't really care too much to kind of look it up, but I thought it was interesting she was on the babyface side. And of course, this was way before the time that the women's division was what it is today, or was at one point in the early 2000s, where it was just tits and ass every single week. This was when they had their ladies division, as they called it, was more focused around the wrestling. Now, I don't think they had they had the women's championship, but it wasn't really a featured title, so to speak. I know it was kind of a huge thing when Moolah was around, but it was kind of a lot bigger when Alundra Blaze was introduced in the early to mid-90s with her and the rest of the women. So we would get more of that as the years would go on. But this was just a women's match just to be a women's match. But I thought it was good. It was, coincidentally enough, in 1987, a hell of a lot better than a lot of the more recent women's elimination tag team matches. Now, I thought last year, I don't really remember much about it, but the year before, I want to say, 2013 was awful. It was the Total Divas versus the non-Total Divas, that whole shit. It was like 7-on-7, and it was just rapid elimination. Just not a lot of good workers in that match at all. That match sucked, and that's what this match was not. And what stood out to me in this match, and McIntyre was a pretty good worker herself, the Jumping Bomb Angels. Now, I know very little about them. I've heard about them before, but these girls are amazing workers. They were like a 10 times better version of the Bella Twins, an Asian version of the Bella Twins, and 10 times better in the ring. They're so much fun to watch, and this was long before the time that we had, cruiserweight style, X Division style matches where it was just kind of car crashes in the best way possible, just a lot of over-the-top action, a lot of exciting wrestling. That was long before this time, long after this time. So the Jumping Bomb Angels were revolutionary, I guess you can kind of say, which is funny, the Divas Revolution, whatever. Were revolutionary in that sense long before that kind of style of wrestling was introduced. Not only to the women, but just in WWE in general. A lot of these workers in the late 80s, early 90s weren't like that. They didn't really have exciting repertoires. The Jumping Bomb Angels did. They were so much fun watching this match, and thankfully they were the sole survivors. So after that, we had the tag team elimination match, and the tag teams included Strike Force, the Young Stallions, the Fabulous Rougeau Brothers, the Killer Bees, and the British Bulldogs. Now, this was a 20-man elimination tag team match, pitting 5 people on each team. So you had 5 teams of 2 on one team, and then 5 teams of 2 on the other. And the heel teams consisted of the Hart Foundation, the Islanders, Demolition, the Bolsheviks, and the Dream Team. So I was kind of skeptical going into this match in that you had fucking 10 tag teams in one match, and it was, you can have gauntlet styles and, stuff like that and whatever, but when you have them all in the same match, it can be kind of a clusterfuck. When it's literally 20 men in the same ring, and they all are all wrapped around the ring, it can kind of be a clusterfuck. And of course, when one guy was eliminated, the entire team was eliminated, I'm pretty sure. If not, it would have taken a lot longer. It was a very long match at 37 minutes. But still, it was interesting. It wasn't bad. It's certainly not as bad as they thought it was going to be, or a big clusterfuck. Very good. I thought the in-ring action was pretty entertaining. It surprised the hell out of me that it was as good as it was. And these sole survivors were the Young Stallions and the Killer Bees. So we get to the main event, the first ever main event in Survivor Series history. Of course, this entire show is historic, so I should probably stop saying that. But the main event consisted of Hulk Hogan, Don Morocco, Bam Bam Bigelow, Paul Orndorff, and Ken Pantera versus the team of Andre the Giant, King Kong Bundy, Rick Rude, Butch Reed, and One Man Gang. And it's funny, too. You look at this match on paper, you think this is going to be a steaming pile of shit. Andre the Giant, the guy's a spectacle. certainly not the greatest worker in the world, but when you have 10 minutes in the same match, then of course he's going to be protected and limited. But you have one-man gang, King Kong Bundy, Bam Bam Bigelow. Some of these guys were more agile than others, but a lot of these big men were not, and you would think it would make for a very slow and plodding match. Hulk Hogan, of course, the world's not greatest worker. Not the world's greatest worker, but it was entertaining. What I liked about it was that you had a story going into it. I read up a little bit on the feuds that were going into it, but obviously the most obvious one was Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. Hogan had handed Andre his first loss at WrestleMania 3 to retain his WWE title. Andre claimed that it was a fluke, leading to the match on this show. So Andre, surprisingly enough, got Hogan eliminated halfway through the match. And it was via disqualification. A lot of the eliminations back then, if you watch these shows, they can't eliminate everyone via pinfall because it just gets to be repetitive, And they didn't really do that all too much. They had a lot of people counted out, disqualified. Now that gets repetitive, and thankfully they cut that crap out by the late 90s. It took them 10 years to figure it out. But I think Hogan was DQ'd or eliminated or whatever, but he was not among the sole survivors. In fact, his team didn't even win. It was the heels. It was Andre. Andre the Giant was the sole survivor in this match, which I thought was awesome. It gave him his heat back from WrestleMania, and it also granted him another championship match, kept the feud going alive between him and Hogan going into the early part of 1988, leading to the whole clusterfuck and the two referees and that whole debacle in early 1988. But I thought it was great. Andre, like I said, he kept his momentum going, got his win back, challenged Hogan with a title match right after this because he won the match. Thought it was good. From an in-ring standpoint, too, it held its own. Wasn't a steaming pile of shit like I thought it was going to be. And for the first ever Survivor Series show, they could have very easily had Hogan go over, either as a sole survivor by himself or with other people, and just end the show on a happy note, as they had done more often than not in the late 80s and early 90s, and just call it a day because it's the first ever Survivor Series. Yippee, this is what the show is. They didn't do that, though. They furthered the feud between him and Hogan, between Andre and Hogan. They got a lot of other feuds furthered over the course of this show, but in the main event specifically, they built towards something bigger, a one-on-one title match, a rematch rather, between Andre and Hogan in the weeks and months and in the WrestleMania season to come. So I thought it was very successful and entertaining in that respect, and that far exceeded my expectations from an in-ring standpoint. But what I liked more about it was the story told and what it meant for the future of the storylines going on in WWF at that period in time. So on the whole, a very fun show. I mean, that can't be said for all the Survivor Series shows in 88, 89, 90. Some of those were not great at all. But this one, I thought was very entertaining. And again, if you're not a fan of every match in the show being a Survivor Series elimination tag team match, that's fine. You don't have to watch all of them like I am to review them here for the channel. I've liked them more often than not. But if you're not one of those people who likes those kind of matches, in every single match in the show, and you don't have a title match or anything else, if anything, watch this one. When between this show, 88, 89, 90, 91, all the ones that were mostly dominated by the elimination tag team matches, this one I thought was the best. You only had 4 elimination tag team matches. The show was like 2.5 hours long, mind you, but each of them was something different. You had a tag team one, a women's one, a mid-carders, upper mid-carders one, and with the better wrestling, in the main event with the main event stars. So I thought it was awesome. Definitely check it out at your leisure. It's a quick viewing, and it's a fun viewing at that. So that's going to end my review of Survivor Series 1987. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And thank you for supporting the show. You can do so by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. But in the meantime, and in between time, guys, you can catch me on the Twitter at WrestleRant, on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.Matthews. Be sure to leave a comment down below with your thoughts on Survivor Series 87. And that's about it. So also check out the website at nextEraWrestling.net. So I'll be back. Like I said in my No Mercy review, I'll probably be posting, I'm recording these on Saturday, so I'll probably be posting like 3 WrestleRant videos on this Sunday, so be sure to check out in your subscription feed for my review of Survivor Series 1988 and beyond that. I'll have my other reviews of Survivor Series up in the days and weeks to come, in the remainder of November, with my reviews of 89, 90, and 91, hopefully coming on Tuesday. So until then, guys, have a great rest of your weekend. I'm Graham Matthews. And I'll catch you folks down the road.